welcome. Thank you for joining me today for the General Knowledge Test Boot Camps. This is a series of 4 different videos about the General Knowledge Test, preparing for the math specifically section. Today's section, or this first section, is the General Knowledge Test Math Competency 1. And then will be another video for 2, 3, and 4. I'm going to start by sharing my screen with a couple of pieces of information for you. So you can see here, I have my contact information. My name is Deanna Schwope. I am one of the academic advisors here in the College of Education at USF. My background was in teaching math, so that's why I lead these boot camps. My email address is here. Please feel free to reach out to me with any questions that you have while you're preparing for the test and everything like that. So today, while we're going over this, you should have this document in front of you. So if you do not have this document in front of you, you should have received it through the email that you received this link for this video. If you did not, or if you got this link through the website, go back to the Canvas site and get this document. If you still can't find it, send me an email and I can send it to you. So I'll wait just a second, make sure you have it out. All right, today we're going to be, like I said, this first boot camp is competency 1. We'll be going over all 4 competencies. So you're going to be using this document for all 4 videos if you're watching this on another video. First page on all of them is this tips, tricks for the test itself. You go to the testing center, you do get a 4-function calculator on the screen, but you can also ask for one. If you're someone who likes to have it in front of you, definitely ask them for one and for you to use during your test. Some information also, this at the bottom is what it looks like for the reference sheet. Keep this in mind because this is the information that you are given, so you don't have to memorize this information. So kind of keep this in mind that this is information you'll be given. You can also ask for a paper copy of this if they do not give you one. Couple things to remember. Tip 1, go through the tutorial at the beginning. There is a tutorial on the test itself that kind of walks you through what does the functionality of the computer system, how do I get from question to question, things like that. One tip, and it's my last bullet point down here, if you do not know how to solve a problem within 30 seconds, so read the problem, not sure how to solve it, they have a mark and review option that you can do. Mark it, move on to the ones you know, and then go back and review them at the end. Big tip, because that way it saves you time later on. If you need a little bit more time, you can go back and spend a little bit more time on this. Another tip, you do have a calculator. Mine, when I took the test, had a square root button, which was kind of helpful, had a fraction button. Specifically, most helpful it had was a plus minus button, so you don't have to memorize integer rules for adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, fractions, decimals, things like that, of positive and negative. Another tip for you, when you're doing the test on those calculators, you can't see the string of numbers. So it's not like when you're doing it on a more scientific calculator where you can see everything you've input. It's a very basic calculator, so make sure you're carefully entering numbers. You do get a piece of laminated paper, either a booklet of it, depending on where you are, or a white erase marker and a whiteboard. So just keep in mind you do have opportunity for some places to work on them work. So let's move on to competency 1. The way I designed these is each section of the boot camp is based on each competency. There are 4 competencies. The first one is knowledge of number sense, concepts, and operations, which is 25% of the test starting January 1st, 2024. I went through and I have the competency, I have some tips that I have for you, and then there's problems. And the way we're going to do these boot camps is I'm just going to work out the problems. Obviously, this is a video that you're watching, so if you aren't sure about something, pause it, rewind it, go back. Go look at it again. You also have my textbook as the other document that you should have received. That actually has my work. So we're doing the work now, but you also have that work in the textbook. So use that as something to compare to as well. All right, so competency 1, skill 1, compare real numbers and identify their location on a number line. Just a couple tips for help placing numbers, draw a number line. If you need to, use your scratch paper, draw yourself a number line so you can remember what does it look like if I'm putting numbers on there? What do they look like? Another thing you need to remember, if you are one of those people that has this fear of fractions, which a lot of people do, change your fractions to decimals. you can divide the top number, numerator, by the bottom number, denominator, and you can change them to decimals. Yes, if the answers are in fractions, you're going to have to kind of do the same thing for those so you can make some reasonable guesses on your questions, but it makes it a lot easier and you can use your calculator. Understanding the relationship between negative numbers, also being able to compare decimals, make sure they're the same amount of decimal points after the decimal so you can compare them. All right, so let's move on to the first question. Students in a mathematics class are allowed to drop their lowest quiz grade. If a student earns the following grades, which grade will be dropped? So what we're going to do, I have my calculator here, is we're going to change all of these to a decimal, which will make it easy to be able to compare them. So if you take 6/8, I'm going to go 6 divided by 8, which is 0.75. And then 2/3 is 2 divided by 3, which is 0.66 repeating, so 0.67. 73%, you move your decimal 2 places to the left. And 6/10, if I divide 6 divided by 10, I get 0.6, which I'm going to make it 0.60. So your grade, go back to your question, which grade will be dropped? We are going to drop the lowest, which is 60 hundredths. So 6/10 is the one being dropped. All right, competency 1, skill 2. That's the only one on competency 1, skill 1 we're going to do, but there's tons of other practice out there. For competency 1, skill 2, solve real-world problems including problems in financial literacy, calculating percentages or simple interest, involving the 4 operations with rational numbers. So one tip for this, write all necessary numbers, information, and what is the question asking you to solve. So basically when you read the question, write everything down, get it off of that computer screen and onto your scratch paper in front of you. And then you can kind of only focus on that. Another thing is make sure you're paying attention to any changes in units. If the question is in feet and they want the answers in inches or yards or something like that, make sure you know that you're changing it. Also, at the very end of your time solving it, go back to the question and see what is the question asking. Make sure you've answered the entire question. All right, so this is kind of a longer one, so let's look at it. The local movie theater is ramping up summer sales and needs to calculate their average profit. Over a 2-week period, they estimated that on average each day, 126 children and 175 adults bought movie tickets at a price of $4 for child tickets and $8 for adult tickets. If the theater's daily running cost is $1,000, how much did they profit over the 14-day period? So let's take a second and just think about the question. Basically, key things, 14-day period. So at the end, we're going to be figuring out for one day, we're going to need to multiply it by 14 to know what it is for all 2 weeks or 14 days. If you look at it, they're saying about 126 children at $4 a ticket. So I'm going to do 126 times $4. And on my trusty calculator, you've got 126 times $4, which is 504. Then you've got 175 adults at $8 a ticket. Oops, that's an equal sign. So 8 times 175 is 1,400. So if we add that up, we have 1,904. Then you also need to make sure you notice that if you think about business, you're bringing in money, but then it costs you money to have your business. So they've got to pay the people, they've got to pay the lease on the building, they've got to pay for the electricity and the water and all of that kind of stuff that they're using. They have to buy the movie from the movie studio. They have to buy all the concessions. So their daily cost to be open is $1,000. So to know what their profit is, we're going to subtract 1,000. So they make $904 per day. I realize that this test is multiple choice, but I don't have multiple choice questions right here. But you got to keep in mind you're going to have multiple choice, and they are going to put an answer like this in the multiple choice because they like to trick you, get you all excited. Oh, I found it, 904, I'm done. But no, forgetting this would make you miss the problem. So make sure you're reading carefully. They want to know in a 14-day period. So I have to now take 904 and multiply it by 1,400. So I'm going to do that on my calculator. And it comes out to Oh, sorry, 1,400. Someone's like, wait. No, Deanna, no 1,400, just 14. That was a big number. 904 times 14 comes out to, for the entire time, $12,656. So it's a multi-step problem, not too difficult, just making sure you're taking your time step by step. All right, next question. You received a student loan to pay for your educational expenses this year. Find the interest on the loan if you borrowed $2,000 at 8% for 1 year. We have on our reference sheet the principal interest formula. So I'm going to actually go back up to the first page quickly, and we're just going to take note of this formula. I know it's a little blurry, but you can have it. So you can see it's interest equals PRT. The I is the interest, the P is the principal, so that's how much you initially borrowed. The rate is the rate of your interest. So if you're borrowing $100,000 at a 6% rate, that's your rate, 6%, and the time. So I equals PRT. So we're going to go back down to our question. I'm going to go ahead and write I equals PRT, so I remember my formula. So let's read it again. You received a student loan to pay for educational expenses this year. Find the interest on the loan if you borrowed $2,000 at 8% for 1 year. So the thing we don't know is the I. So we are borrowing the principal, which is 2,000. You have to change the percent to a decimal. So it's 8%, so it becomes 0.08, and it's 1 year. So I could put the 1 or leave the 1, but I'm going to put the 1 just so we can stay consistent with the formula. So it's $2,000 times 8% for 1 year. So the interest that is paid on that 1 year of that loan is $160. And this math on the GKT is very real world. This is real world. Your students, a lot of you have loans. Think about what the percentage on your loan is. What is the interest on it? This is how much on $2,000 in this particular interest that you'd be paying your loan every year. So it's real world math. So don't try to memorize things on this GKT. That's one of my biggest pieces of advice. Try not to memorize this much on questions like this. More try to think of them, reason through them. What makes sense? What doesn't make sense? Because it's a lot of real world math. Yes, there's some things, especially when you get to like competency 2 in the next video, where you have to memorize things like vocabulary, stuff like that. But in this case, you've got the formula, put the information. If you forgot to change the percentage to a decimal and you only put an 8 instead of 0.08, 2,000 times 8 is $16,000. They're probably going to have that answer there because somebody might forget you have to change the decimal. So make sure you're changing this to a decimal. But reason with it. If you're like, I got $16,000, does it make sense if I borrowed $2,000, I'd have to pay $16,000 in interest? Hopefully not. So kind of reason through it. Use your logic to help you with a lot of this as well. Let's look at number 4. You are starting your own business. You borrow $10,000 from the bank at a 9% rate for 5 years. Find the interest you will pay on the loan. Same formula, same I we're fighting. So it's $10,000 for a 9% rate, changing it to a percent to a decimal for 5 years. So $10,000 on my calculator times 0.09 comes out to 900. They're probably going to have the number 900 there because 900 is only for 1 year. So you're going to multiply that by 5 and you get $4,500. So the interest you'll pay on a loan of $10,000 over the period of 5 years at 9% is $4,500. All right, number 5, June wanted to make punch for her event. The recipe called for 1½ cups of orange juice, 2/3 cup of pineapple juice, 1/4 cup of lime juice, and 1 2/3 cup of ice. She wants to make 1½ recipes. We're going to keep that in mind. And we are changing pints, because all this is in cups. How much pints of liquid, that's important, will she need? And round to the nearest tenth. So if we look at it, couple things we need to know. 1½ recipe. That means we're going to multiply each ingredient by 1.5. That's 1 recipe plus a half a recipe, 1.5. Another thing to keep in mind is liquid. So we're not going to use the ice. We don't need the ice. We just want to know the liquid. And keeping in mind, we're going to change to pints at the end. So let's start by putting everything in decimal form so that it makes it easier to multiply and then multiply it by 1.5. That way we can easily convert them. So 1.5, and we're gonna do 1.5. Point or 2/3 is 0.67 repeating, and we're gonna do 1.5 of those. And 1/4 is 0.25, and we're gonna do 1.5 of those. So if I multiply them all together, I get 1.5 times 1.5, which is 2.25. I've got 0.67 times 1.5. And I got, hold on, try that one more time. 1.67 times 1.5, 1.005. I'm going to go ahead and just leave the in there because we're going to round at the end, but let's leave it there. That way we can easily round. And then we got 0.25 times 1.5, excuse me, 0.375. If I add those together, 0.375 plus 1.005 plus 2.25, I get 3.63 cups. We're not done, but you know the answers of 3.63 is going to be there because they're going to try to trick you because it's a multiple choice test. But we have to change cups to pints. I'm going to teach you a trick right now for conversions. You can use this, you can use some logic, but this is a good one. If you can remember this trick on conversions, you can solve a lot of these questions on this test because there gets to a lot of conversions once we get to competency 2. We do know that there are 2 cups in a pint. You can go back to your reference sheet and see that. So basically you write what you're starting with, 3.63 cups over 1, because you can change anything to a fraction by putting it over 1. And if you multiply anything by 1, you're not changing the value of it. So we're going to multiply by a conversion factor. We're going to put what we're changing from on the bottom and what we're changing to on the top. And there's 2 cups and 1 pint. You can cancel the cups, and now you're left with pints. I used to teach my students to cancel until they circle what they want. And we got the pints. So now we just take 3.63 and we divide by 2. And it comes out to 1.815. They wanted us to round to the nearest tenth. So it's 1.8 pints. All right. Number 6. Jim bought a house for $155,000 and had to put down 20% of the cost for a down payment. How much was his down payment? So basically we want to know what is 20% of $155,000. 2 different ways to do this. There is over of equals percent over 100, or you can change the percent to a decimal. Is means equal, of means multiply. In this case, it's a pretty easy one because we're just talking about a percent of something. So we're just going to change the percent to a decimal, multiply $155,000. So if I say $155,000 times 0.2, I get 31,000 is his down payment. All right, next, 7. Bradley had to pay a total of $185,000 when he moved into his new townhome, which included his fee to his realtor. If the base cost of his townhome was $180,500, what percentage of the cost of the townhome did his realtor receive? So we basically have to figure out first how much did they receive, and then we can figure out what that percentage is. So it's $185,000 minus $180,500, and don't get too mixed up with the numbers. 885,000 minus 180,500 comes out to $4,500. So that is how much money the realtor made. And we want to know, basically you can write it in words, 4,500 is what percent of, and we want it of the total of the house, not the total that we paid. The total of the house. In this case, we're going to use this is over of, is percent over 100. So I'm going to make myself what's called a proportion. So the is basically you can kind of do this, and it's whatever's next to it. So 4,500 is the is the denominator. Percent is on top. We don't know what it is, and it's always 100. So if we take 4,500 times 100, which is 450,000, divided by 180,500, it comes out to 2.4937. So, and then you have to, we're just going to look at it as a 2.49% or 2% about. I realize I skipped over something on that last step. A little trick with proportions. You basically are cross multiplying these two and putting them equal to each other. A little trick that you can do is you can multiply the two that are diagonal from each other and then divide by the one that's by itself. And that's how I did it on my calculator. I said 4,500 times 100 divided by 180,500. So it's about a 2% interest or 2% fee that went to the realtor. All right, next question. At a local department store, sweaters have been reduced to $36. The price is 20% of the original price. Given this, what was the original price? So we're going to say original price equals P. So you have to kind of think of it logically. If you're talking about what it's reduced to, that means something was subtracted from it. In this case, they're telling us it's a 20% off. So basically, we're saying there's the original price minus 20% of the original price, and that equaled $36. So take a second to think about that. The original price, P, minus 20% of P was $36. So if we say there's a 1 in front of that P, it's 0.80P is $36. So 36, just doing a little bit of algebra here, 36 divided by 0.8 is $45. So the original price of the sweater was $45. All right, competency 1, skill 3. Order of operations, PEMDAS. So many people remember PEMDAS. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Most people have no problem remembering it, but the problem they forget is what I have highlighted here. When you're talking about multiplication or division, it's whichever comes first from left to right. I used to have my students write little arrows above the M and the D, and I'd have them do the same over the A and the S because it's the same thing for addition and subtraction. Left to right. So it's not I always multiply before I divide, or I always subtract or add before I subtract. Not true. When you get to those steps, you go left to right. So let's start off with this first question. I'm just going to rewrite it to make it easier to solve. So this actually we're going to be distributing because we have to distribute this number to what's in the parentheses. And the key is when you're distributing is you need to make sure you're distributing the negative number. Don't just leave a subtraction sign and distribute the positive 4. You're distributing a negative 4 to the inside on both parts of the inside. So it becomes x, negative 4 times 2x is negative 8x. Negative 4 times a positive 1 is negative 4. Now we can simplify those. We get 1 minus 8, so negative 7x minus 4. Then we can distribute our 6, so it's negative 42x minus 24. Next question. Which answer shows the correct simplification? So we're just doing the order of operations. 150 divided by 6 plus 3 times 8 minus 5. So PEMDAS, we don't have any parentheses, we don't have any exponents. Actually, we do have parentheses, just kidding with parentheses. Within parentheses, you have to do PEMDAS. So the first step we're going to do is multiplication. I used to have my students underline it like this. So this is not a division symbol. It's just me underlining the step that I'm doing. And I'd have them recopy everything else exactly what it was and then solve what's underlined. So 3 times 8 is 24. We're still on parentheses. So we have 150 divided by 6 plus 24 is 30. Minus 5. Now we're dividing. Take off the 0, so you have 15 divided by 3, which is 5, minus 5, and the answer is 0. All right, number 11, simplify the following expression. 5 minus 8 times the quantity 4 minus 5v plus 3v. Inside the parentheses, we need to first do a little combining terms. So 5 minus 8. We could do, actually, yeah, let's do that first. Times 4, negative 5 plus 3 is negative 2v. Now we can distribute our negative 8. So we have 5 minus 32 plus 16v. And I'm not going to try to do it in my head. I know you could easily do it, but I'm going to say 5 minus 32, which is negative 27 plus 16v. All right, 12, same thing. Still doing order of operations. 5 minus the quantity, 49 divided by 7 minus 5 times 2 plus 9 minus 3. Inside the parentheses first, we're going to divide. 49 divided by 7 is 7. Then we're going to subtract. 7 minus 5 is 2. Then we're going to multiply. 5 minus 2 times 2 is 4, plus 9 minus 3. And then I can just go left to right. I can say 5 minus 4 plus 9 minus 3 equals 7. All right, 13. Simplify the following expression. 9 minus 5 plus parentheses 18 divided by 2 times 3 times 5 plus 6. Inside the parentheses, we will divide first. Remember, first from left to right. 18 divided by 2 is 9 times 3 times 5 plus 6. That's a plus. Let's make it more evident. Still have parentheses, so we're going to do 9 times 5 first, which is 27 times 5 plus 6. We're going to multiply. I'm going to use my calculator. 27 times 5, which is 135. So it becomes 9 minus 5 plus 135 plus 6. And now I'm just going to go left to right. 9 minus 5 plus 135 plus 6. And the answer is 145. And last on this page, 14, simplify the following expression. 4 times the quantity, x minus 2, 3x plus 6. So we're going to first distribute our negative 2. So it becomes 4 times the quantity x. Negative 2 times positive 3x is negative 6x. Negative 2 times 6 is negative 12. Going to combine those terms. That's a 1. 1 minus 6 is negative 5x minus 12. We're going to distribute again. So we have negative 20x minus 48. Lots of practice with order of operations and kind of simplifying expressions with algebra. And that brings us to the end of competency 1. Please feel free to return to the next video. You can come right now or you can do it later for the next competency. But again, if you have any questions, please feel free to go to the first slide of this video, get my email address, send me an email. So I'll see you again in competency 2.